Hawaiian purple sweet potato filling, and they're in the shapes of pumpkins. They're very unique little breads to make, very fun to look at, and quite easy to make as well, but most importantly, it's very healthy and delicious. So first we're going to process the pumpkin and the purple sweet potatoes. I'm using fresh pumpkin to make my pumpkin puree. You can use any type of squash as well. You can also use canned pumpkin puree if you don't have this time on your hands, but I do definitely recommend you to make it yourself because it gives the freshest and best flavor. Now we're going to cut these into large chunks since we are going to be steaming them with the sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes take longer to steam, so to make them both take around the same time, we want to make these a little bit larger. For this recipe, we need 450 grams of the raw pumpkin after the skin has been removed. Now we're going to move on to the sweet potatoes. So today I'm using Hawaiian purple sweet potatoes. They may not look super appetizing, but once you peel off the skin, it has a really nice and vibrant purple color on the inside, so it's going to make a really nice filling. But it's also a very unique ingredient because it's really high in nutrition. It's overall very healthy and delicious. I'm chopping the sweet potatoes into cubes around this size because it does tend to take a little bit longer to cook. By reducing the size, it's going to reduce the time, so it's going to cook the same amount of time as the pumpkin. Place the sweet potatoes and the pumpkin into a steam pot. I'm not using a bowl for the pumpkin because I want the extra moisture to strain away while cooking. Then turn the heat on and cook it until everything is soft and you're able to easily poke it with a fork. Take the pumpkin out, and I'm going to push this through a sieve to puree it. You can also use a blender if you want to. Now that the puree is ready, we can start to make the dough. So I have left this puree out for just a little bit so that it's not super hot, but you also don't want it to be super cold. You need it to be somewhat warm so that it has a sense of heat to kind of jumpstart that instant yeast and allow it to be active. You also don't want to drain away all of the excess water inside of this puree because this is the only source of liquid that we're getting inside of this dough, so you need that to be a little bit moist to bring the dough together. I have a large bowl here. Today I'm going to be making my dough by hand, which is a rare occurrence, but this is quite easy to make. You can also use a stand mixer if you would like to just save yourself a little bit of time. So add all of the ingredients into a large mixing bowl. That includes the all-purpose flour, the warm pumpkin puree, as well as the dry active instant yeast. Then just mix it together with a spatula. Once you form a dough, we're going to flip this onto a clean surface and we're going to start kneading this. So this is going to take a little bit of strength and patience because the more you knead it, the more gluten you develop and the stretchier and softer the bread becomes. It shouldn't be sticky at all, but if it is, sprinkle a very little bit of flour onto the surface so that it prevents it from sticking, but you shouldn't have to add any additional flour or liquid to this. You want to knead this dough until it becomes really smooth on the surface and becomes really elastic. This should take 10 to 15 minutes, so it may be quite of a workout. It's okay to take a few breaks in between, but overall you just want to knead it so that it develops lots of gluten and makes this bread really soft. Now that we have the dough nice and kneaded, it is smooth and soft, so we're going to place it into a bowl for it to rise. But before that, I'm going to spray some cooking spray into the sides of the bowl and the bottom so that the dough doesn't stick to it while it's rising and after it is done. You can also just brush on a little bit of flavorless oil, and that'll also prevent it from sticking. Then just cover the dough. I'm using this lid that's reusable, but you can also use plastic wrap or some type of wet cloth. I'm just going to place this aside for about an hour or two until the dough has risen and doubled in size. While the dough is rising, we're going to work on the filling. So I have my blender here. I find that this is the easiest way to make a super smooth filling. You can also choose to do this by hand. Try to do this while the sweet potatoes are still a little bit warm because it'll be softer and easier to blend in with the rest of the ingredients. I'm going to add all of that into the blender. Now to that we're going to add some sweetened condensed milk. This is going to be the additional sugar that we're adding into the filling, but it also adds a really nice kind of dairy scent as well as the moisture that we need to bring the filling together. Finally, we're going to add some coconut oil to this filling. I like to use coconut oil because it has a really unique flavor once it's blended in with the purple sweet potatoes. It balances each other really well, but if you don't want to use this, you can choose to use melted butter as well. This is finished blending and it's now really nice and smooth, so I'm going to transfer it out. Keep in mind that it's best for you to blend it while it's still warm because it's the softest. If you find that this mixture is becoming super hard to blend and becoming really dry, you can speed things up a little bit by adding just a splash of milk, about a teaspoon or two. You can also use coconut milk. But keep in mind that this is supposed to be quite a thick mixture because we want to be able to form a ball later on to place into the buns. Cover the filling with some plastic wrap and place it into the fridge while we wait for the dough to rise. It is important that you cover it so it doesn't dry out and it doesn't form a skin on top. And if you keep it in the fridge, it can solidify a little bit since there is oil in here, which is going to make the process of assembling a little bit easier later. My dough has been rising for about an hour. It is now doubled in size, but the amount of time that it takes for your dough to rise will depend on the temperature of your room. If it is a little bit warmer, it will take less time. So the time may vary for you. I'm just going to briefly roll this into a snake so that we can make it easier to measure out the dough. So the pumpkin buns that I'm making today are going to be 50 grams of the dough on the outside and the 30 grams of the filling on the inside. You can change up the ratio however you would like, but I do recommend you to give it more dough than there is filling because we do want to make it a pumpkin shape later on, and if the dough is too thin, then it will break easily and it won't work out very well. So I'm just going to measure out the dough to 50 grams each. I've weighed out all of the dough to 50 grams, and now I'm going to cover it with a damp towel to prevent it from drying out while we measure the filling. I'm going to measure out the filling as well. It's been in the fridge for quite a bit. I'm going to measure out 30 grams each. Of course, you can choose to eyeball this or use a mini ice cream scoop to just scoop it right into the dough when you're putting it together, but I prefer to have a more consistent ratio so that I can control the baking time better as well. This shouldn't stick to your hands at all, but if it is, you can just place it back in the fridge and let it chill a little bit more so that it's firm and it's easier to work with. This is actually a really great filling. It can be used for lots of different types of desserts and baked goods. So today we're making it out of bread. You can also make it into mooncakes, mochi, tangyuan, or just many different types of desserts because it has a really nice flavor that kind of blends into a lot of things, and it's also not overly sweet. We can now start to assemble the buns. So once again, keep all of the dough underneath the wet cloth so it doesn't become dried out. And I have my filling ready to go. So I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of flour onto my work surface so that nothing sticks. Take out a piece of dough underneath the cloth. It should be nice and soft again, so I'm just going to use my hands to make a bit of a well and make the edges a little bit thinner so that when we pinch it all together, it's not going to be a huge clump of dough. And take a piece of filling, place it into that little bowl. Try to make sure there are no air bubbles when you are wrapping the filling because you don't want there to be huge air pockets after it is baked. Make sure you pinch the bottom shut and there aren't any room for the filling to escape. And now to make this look a bit like a pumpkin, we're going to make some indentations in the dough. I have a really sharp paring knife here, and I'm just going to create 6 cuts along the dough. Make sure you're being gentle. You don't want to cut through the dough, but you do want to make an indent sharp enough and deep enough that after it rises, it's still visible. I also like to make a few cuts in the back so that after it rises, it still holds its pumpkin shape. Once you have the pumpkin, create a well inside the center of the pumpkin, and we're going to take a raisin. I like to kind of roll it between my fingers to make it a little bit longer, and then stick it into that well to resemble the stem of the pumpkin. Make sure it's nice and secured in there so it doesn't fall out while the dough is rising and while it's baking. So there you have it, the little pumpkin. Once all of the pumpkin buns are assembled, place the cloth back over the tray so that it doesn't dry out. We're going to leave this out for about 15 to 20 minutes so that it can rise the second time and become nice and puffy again. And before baking, this is optional, but I do like to brush on a light layer of egg wash just so that the pumpkin buns can brown nicer and more evenly. This recipe makes 14 pumpkin buns with 50 gram dough and 30 grams of filling. Now place this into the preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 25 minutes or until the buns are nice and golden brown. So that's it with these pumpkin buns. These are looking very pumpkin-like, nice and golden brown on top and ready to be eaten. I would recommend you to store these in the fridge in an airtight container up to 3 days, and I usually like to heat it up before eating just so it's nice and soft and warm on the inside. I really hope that you can try these out. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time. Bye!